Hey everyone, welcome to the Parts Management Podcast. I'm interviewing Chuck Hartley. Today we're going to talk about inventory control and what parts managers need to know about it because it's a big topic. I mean, that's like the job. It's inventory control, right? Part of it
Yeah.
at least. Yeah. So first we want to talk about the basics of inventory control and what are the key fundamental principles? Like what does a parts manager need to think about when they're thinking about inventory control? And I want you to answer it in a way of like, let's just think we're talking to a brand new parts manager right now that doesn't know about inventory control. They may know about parts, but like, so answer that question in that mindset.
Oh, well, Kaylee, walking into any parts department, and as most parts managers know, as they get used to it, is they have different commodities. Okay. They have maintenance items. They have collision. They have chemicals. They have tires and gas, oil, and grease. That's typically, there's your first, when they go in, and typically what we see with most dealerships we deal with, they have a series of sources or stocking groups that have that broke down already. And it doesn't matter if you're on a stock replenishment program or you're not. The settings within your system, typically because of those different commodities, they're all predicated on sale accounts and asset accounts. So that's just kind of the nuts and bolts. Most manufacturers have an asset account for regular parts, tires, and gas, oil, and grease. So when you go in and you look at that, now you got to determine as you look at that, even within parts, I just had a phone conversation on this, a half hour ago, is this particular parts manager said, I got my collision parts mixed in with my hard parts and my accessories, and trying to deal with that every day is really a pain. And, you know, when you're dealing with different commodities like that, you want to break them out separately. Even if you have two or three sources or stock groups that you can break out maintenance items and separate, sheet metal out completely different and with a completely different phasing criteria or whatnot. That's the first thing you want to do is how do I want to control my inventory for sales purposes, for inventory control purposes, day supply settings. Excuse me, all of that comes into account.
And that's what the sources are for those different purposes. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to break out your parts and because of pricing for just, it depends on the category, basically what you're talking about, or commodity. You can
Right.
set it up differently. Who sets up sources normally?
Well, therein lies part of the problem. Most parts managers, what we find out is they're afraid to set up sources. Like with CDK, you have to go to 12 different programs to get everything set up right. First, you set up the source. Then you have to go into IRO and set the day supply and the phasing criteria. Oh, by the way, now we got to go to SPB to set up the matrix. And oh, yeah, make sure you go to PMU and map it right for the master tape. And oh, yeah, now we got OSSA for the accounting. And oh, on the service side, we got to go into USA. And so the fear of setting up a source correctly is typically why most parts managers won't set up sources. They, taking the time, with rentals, you have to add all the price codes into each source. And you may want them to do something differently. And I've seen a lot of parts managers who go in, they set up a source, it fails miserably. So they just have to move everything back because they didn't set it up right, and or they try and go to the DMS vendor. And we found that most DMS vendors, at least the four major ones, don't even know how to set up a system. They just go, what do you want? And the parts manager, he or she, they're going, no, I need you to set it up. I don't need you to tell me, I need it to work right. Help me. And so it's like this blind leading the blind is the best way to put it sometimes. It's amazing how many calls we get dealing with just that.
I have a question. What is the problem with, because if someone is taking over, because we're seeing a lot of that, parts managers are taking over for other parts managers, and they're taking over a setup that parts manager set up probably, several years ago. What is the
Yeah.
problem with that? Like, is there, I guess what I'm trying to get out of you is like, should sources be reviewed and tweaked? How often should they be reviewed and tweaked and changed?
Quarterly, monthly, Um, if you take over and you leave everything the way it was, and for a period of time you are until you really learn, I think most parts managers, me included, even when I started in business, we didn't go to college to get a degree on parts management. It was UHK, University of Hard Knocks. We learned as we went. And 99% of the parts managers out there go through that process, and it's an education. And when they take over a dealership for whatever reason, parts manager, and what we've seen a lot lately is a lot of parts managers have retired, and you got new people coming in, and the areas to find education. That's why we're doing what we're doing right now. Trying to find a place to get educated is really hard. There are consulting companies out there. I bring up ADMI because they're one of the bigger ones. They do some consulting work and so forth. And that's where people try to seek out that education through NADA or NCM or, whatnot, to try and help educate. A parts manager who wants to learn can learn, but it's a painful process because especially with the DMS vendors anymore, they just don't have the people who really understand how to set things up.
Yeah, and that's a make it or break it or a huge thing for a parts manager if it's not set up right. And I do feel like you're accurate in like when I talk to parts managers, a lot of them are very fearful in setting up sources because they don't want to mess up things, but they also see this like opportunity of like I can make these changes so that my job will be easier when I'm reviewing the data, because that goes back to my next question of like how a parts manager can balance between like sufficient stock and avoiding the overstocking, because as we mentioned before, this is the dealer's investment, and parts managers don't want to overstock parts they're not going to sell. I mean, no one wants that.
Yeah, and more importantly, I think, and this goes back to my 101, the thing that I started 30 years ago, is the milk and the canned asparagus. Is, two, looking at the grocery store concept, and I've said this a million times, but it bears saying it again. Milk, you sell hundreds of gallons a day, it's perishable, you got canned asparagus, yeah, maybe you sell a couple of cans a week. They're so dynamically different, these two commodities. And so if you're a grocer, how would you set up a source to manage these two commodities? If you set, let's say they're both in the same source, would you set your source up for the milk? If you do, what happens? You end up having a lot of canned asparagus. And if you set it up for the canned asparagus, you're going to run out of milk. Well, that's what happens in dealerships. They put oil filters in with moldings or clips. And now parts managers, they have to deal with that. Now, in an ASR program, say, RIM with GM and Ford, Arrow with Chrysler, whatever, they go, well, that's being managed for me, and the manufacturer is managing that day's supply setting, right? And as we have seen in a lot of instances, these ASR programs, they overstock the dealers with a lot of marginal parts that don't sell. They do guarantee what sells, but they also put more parts on their shelves. As managers, I've said this again 100 times. They get one-hit wonders, and they have to take 9 out of 10 parts. And here's this one-hit wonder. They have to take some of these marginal parts to remain compliant. So under this process, what you really want to do, and what most parts managers have figured out, just order the cheaper parts that you can, so that you remain compliant, but you're not taking all the expensive parts, and that's where a parts manager under an ASR program, to kind of highlight this, if you can be 85% compliant, but you're 100% compliant overall, you're not looking at your product, and basically you're carrying a lot of unnecessary stock. If you got to be 85 or 90% compliant, 85% compliant, be about 87, 90%, be about 92. Make some decisions on some of these higher dollar parts so you're not putting them on the shelf and wasting space, so you can put better parts on.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions just hearing that. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to go back to. Well, what you're just talking about is, I think that's the category that we track very closely, and that would be like the watch and the excess category of our inventory report, because I think data is really important for parts managers so that they can make these decisions and actually see what's happening with their inventory. Can you speak to that idea of tracking the watch? Because I don't think the DMS is call it that or track it. I mean, I think that's a PartsEdge term. PartsEdge is all I know, so watch is what I understand.
Yeah. Most excess inventory, as we see it, day in and day out, most of it comes from basically two of those commodities: bulk oil and tires. And most tires anymore are pretty much controlled through a replenishment program, tire rack, dealer tire, whatnot. But still, when you sell one tire, you have a 30-day supply set up on the source, and you sell a set of tires, 4 of them, in 1 month based on a 30-day supply. After you don't sell them the next month, the best stocking level drops, but you got to carry the full set of 4. So now 2 are excess. If you don't sell any for 60 days, now the best stocking level 1, now the excess is 3 tires. With bulk oil, and typically what we find with bulk oil is that most parts managers go in and they set up their source with a 1-day supply, because they're never going to order bulk oil anyway. The truck pulls in, fills up the tanks or whatnot. And the reality is you should set up the source with a 30-day supply, okay? And yeah, you're never going to order it anyway. Just never order that source, shut it down. But, don't create a day supply setting that all of a sudden makes your excess look unrealistic with a 1-day supply. With oil, you want to make sure you keep a 30-day supply. So to realistically report excess inventory, you want to realistically set up the source, whether you order it or not, to get an actual good stocking level.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And that kind of goes back to my other question I had about sources, because you would think that, it's common to break out the different commodities, the parts. So I guess I want to dig deeper into, why is there this one perspective of like, I only need 2 sources, and the other perspective of like, more is better. So I want to get your take on that clash of perspectives on sources, because I've heard both sides.
Okay. Again, milk and canned asparagus.
I get that. Yep.
Okay. I only want to deal with 2 sources. You're only dealing with 2 sources. You're putting your milk and your canned asparagus in, and you're spending a lot of time trying to manage it. This day and age, inventory control, especially with the stock replenishment, but there are several manufacturers that still allow you to do it on your own. But even under a stock replenishment program, you want to break out sources for pricing. You want to break out and set your sources, whether the manufacturer's controlling it or you're controlling it. You still want to set a realistic day supply and phase-in criteria so you can accurately report your inventory. Okay? Pricing is a big thing. But you know what? There are parts that you're selling that aren't manufacturer controlled. We go through this all the time, Kaylee. How many times do you run a stock order each week on the parts that are not manufacturer controlled, like the 75 GM stores we deal with? And they go, gee, we never thought about that. And you talk to them and, they go, I go, what do you do when you got a part that you're selling and all of a sudden RIM doesn't replace it because it's not a guaranteed part? Oh, we throw it on a CSO order. In other words, they're very reactive to inventory instead of proactive. And so getting back to one or two sources and trying to manage your inventory, that's like trying to manage disorganized chaos, in my opinion. And it means you're working a heck of a lot harder for your inventory than breaking it out the way it could be to save you a ton of time.
Yeah, and that goes back to just that fear of breaking it out. But I do want to point out too, because you mentioned the ASRs, and we've talked about this before, but just real quickly, so kind of put it in perspective, what's the average percentage that a manufacturer guarantees the inventory? Isn't it like 20 to 30% of the inventory is protected?
It depends on the manufacturer. We have PartsEdge with Subaru. I put them at the top. And remember, the manufacturer can still control PartsEdge as a third party. But Subaru stores, we see it as high as 75, 80%. GM and Chrysler is more around 40 to 50%. Ford, and I'm going to lump BMW in with Ford and BMW are around 20 to 25%. But then when we look at what Ford and BMW are guaranteeing as a percentage, 25%, it's the high velocity, fast moving parts. They're not shoving a bunch of one hit wonders down their throat. Okay. Their program seems a little bit more to, we're going to deal with the high velocity parts, such as maintenance parts or whatnot. We're going to let you worry about the other parts. So it really depends on the manufacturer, Kaylee. But,
Yeah.
With Ford and GM, or with GM and Chrysler, excuse me, they seem to be, if you can get it up around 50%, you're doing okay. To me, the brass ring on guaranteed inventory that everybody wants to reach for, and you're never going to get it, but hey, would be, hey, 100% of my inventory is guaranteed. 15 years ago when GM introduced RIM, it's been, 17 years ago, the ultimate goal was, hey, we're going to guarantee your inventory. Well, they found out they're only guaranteeing what sells. Click. ASRs are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. You just have to maximize what you can under the programs and play by their rules.
Yeah, there's advantages and benefits of it. I just wanted to put that perspective of like, it's not protecting your whole entire inventory because
Not even close.
yeah. So that was great. Thank you, Chuck.